the majority of people in America are white, so it would be difficult for them to accept that idea. So I won't be, it won't be far-fetched for them to not accept that idea. But and I do understand that. But this is why we also have to make the understanding that when we talk about racism and when we talk about inherent racism shouldn't have the same stigma as calling someone who is perpetually giving racism.
You're delusional and you're talking in circles, and this is why people don't take anything the left says seriously sometimes.
At this point, we have to ask the question: when are we going to take this microaggression seriously? Because again, we understand that all white people do have internal racism because of the system that's built into that. It's not even saying that being racist in itself is a bad thing. It's a label that the.
Well, what is it when we say everyone has? I mean, like, do you think that all black people have racism built into them?
No, of course not.
Wait, why?
Because of the system in itself. See, the thing is, what we need to understand is that.
Wait. Wait. When you say that all white people have racism built into them, what definition of racism are we using, and what do we mean by that?
Well, so first we have to understand that racism in itself is a social construct, meaning that society created the idea. We also have to understand is that the individual also controls the idea of that social construct, meaning that my definition might not be the same as yours.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. That's why I'm just asking. What is your definition of racism?
So my definition of racism is basically the idea that a system that you benefit from a certain system.
So this mysterious black man immediately started the video and said that he said all white people are racist. That's what he said. He said they're all racist. They all have internalized racism, but this racism doesn't fall on black people. He also said racism is a social construct that black people are immune from. And if you guys don't know, Destiny is not a conservative. He's a liberal debater. So he's about to tear him up on this topic, which is crazy. Because now it seems like even the liberal debaters are becoming more conservative. But nonetheless, let's get into it. Bro, I'm tired of all the lies. Everybody lies. And if you tired of the lies too, check out Ground News. If you guys don't know, Ground News is a site that shows you the left and right side of the spectrum. It cuts through all the noise, cuts through all the crap that you don't want to see no more. It's 2025. An example of this is this story. Trump says Putin playing with fire and new jab at Russian leader. If you look at the left, a storyline is Trump admits protecting Putin over Ukraine. He's playing with fire. West Hawaii today. And if you look at the right, it says Trump will walk away from Ukraine. Obviously, different headings for the same exact story, and this is not just me. In the coverage details, we can see that there's 350 total stories. 51 leaning left, 60 leaning right. And Ground News also shows you the bias distribution. Shows you 32% of the stories for this are left and 38% are right. This is actually pretty even. Shows you the factuality, shows you all that. Ground News also has something that I think is pretty cool called the blind spot. The blind spot shows you the stories that are not being shown on the left or right. I love Ground News, and I don't do sponsorships over here. I don't do sponsorships, but I'm doing this one because Ground News, they don't play no games. They'll lead you in the right direction. If you like Ground News, hit up ground.news/LFRJojo for 40% off the Grant Vantage subscription. Anyways, let's get back to it.
You benefit from, so basically a system that oppresses one race over the other. That's my definition of racism, because you benefit from this system that automatically makes you racist, but it is a label that the system has given you because you are able to benefit from my oppression. White privilege is literally just black people being oppressed. The reason why you have privilege is because you have a higher risk of not being unalived by a police officer than I do, even if we do the same crime. So this is why I say
okay, wait, so then when you say, so you're if there was a black man and he made a sexist joke towards his black girlfriend, since black women have a higher class right now, or are ascending to a higher class.
All black men have misogynoir.
Well, but like, couldn't black men argue that, well, actually black women, because they on it in the aggregate, at least I think in younger demographics, are making more money than black men, that black men can't be misogynistic towards black women because now they have like more systemic privilege or whatever than them? Or
not true, because in that same system, it automatically disproportionately affects black men to not even graduate. Black men are more likely to be to not reach a certain age as black women. We also know that black men are going to be expelled at a higher rate than black women. So we have these things that contradict itself. So while yes, you can make that argument, there's other contradictions that doesn't make that argument valid.
Okay, can any non-white demographic in the U.S. be racist, or is it only whites?
So it's only white. And when we talk about race, like, and whiteness in itself doesn't matter when it comes to nationality or ethnicity in itself. Like a German person who has a white skin complexion would be considered white. So yes,
Okay, so
all
like
white
I'm just
people.
curious. So like if a Hispanic person calls a black person the N-word, what would we describe that action as?
If that Hispanic person is an Afro Hispanic,
No, like
they're
a
black.
super Hispanic, like a brown, looks Mexican. Nobody would ever think he's like
If
black.
that if and this is what's the difficulty. And again, race in itself.
This person is extremely delusional. This is what I call just pure delusion. He says only white people can be racist. No other race can be racist. Black people can't be racist. Asian people can't be racist. Hispanic people can't be racist. No one can be racist but white people. He says that even someone who is advocating, I guess, for black rights or whatever, Destiny, even he is racist. Even he benefits from racism, and even he is getting this crappy lecture about how somehow Destiny's life impedes on his life because the guy talking is black. This is just pure delusion. Pure delusion. This guy probably needs therapy, if I'm being honest. He needs therapy. He needs something, bro. This is insane.
Subjective, and it's based on phenotype. So if that individual has black skin, you said brown.
I said like not black, not I know what you're. I'm just saying you look at him and people would clearly identify this guy as a Hispanic, not Afro, not like African American, like a Hispanic person, like a super Hispanic person. Would and he calls a African American person who looks much darker and everything. He calls him the N-word.
That's prejudice.
But not race. What kind of
consider that
but not
prejudice?
but not racism.
No, and a lot of people do have the idea that prejudice and racism are the same thing. Well, theoretically, we know that prejudice came first, then race in itself. And prejudice was literally having having negative ideas towards someone based on a certain group. And now people are trying to use the idea of racism to attract it to having hatred towards a certain race. But again, it's very subjective, and this is argumentative, so it can go both ways. But I do believe that the idea of prejudice and the idea of racism are two complete things, completely different things.
Gotcha. If a black person calls a Middle Eastern person like a sand N-word, is that racism or is that just prejudice?
That would be prejudice. But I don't want people to have the understanding that prejudice and racism can't be an equal playing field. They can definitely be an equal playing field when we talk about America. But when we talk about like racism with white people in itself, the idea is that the system that was created was created for the benefit of white people. And when we talk about the benefit of white people, it automatically oppresses black people. So when we talk about that idea of racism, it does have a stronger tone than if a black person calls a Middle Eastern person a sand N-word, or I could say because I'm black. But regardless of the fact, that'd be prejudice, which is a big problem, and it does affect that individual's ethnicity. But I wouldn't call it racism.
Okay, and then what if a white
black? So I could say it.
What if a white person goes to like a black majority African nation and calls somebody the N-word there in another nation? Would it not be racism there since they have a different power structure, or?
So, and that's a good question. So, in that self, then I would say that the definition of racism can change in itself. I do think when we talk about the racism I'm talking about specifically, it would have to be the hierarchy of white people. But if you go to a black country, majority black, and white people are oppressed, which we don't know, there's no country that's doing that, then we can make the argument that black people are being racist in that country. And when we look at the social construct of racism, it is the hatred of one race or the dislike of another race. So
do you think that your definition or your use of the words racism or prejudice here, do you think that this stands in contrast to how the majority of people use these words in the USA?
No, not entirely.
You think that most people would agree with the idea that like only white people can be racist?
Well, majority of people in America are white, so it would be difficult for them to accept that idea. So it won't be far-fetched for them to not accept that idea. But and I do understand that. But this is why we also have to make the understanding that when we talk about racism and when we talk about inherent racism shouldn't have the same stigma as calling someone who is perpetually giving racism. Because when we acknowledge first,
you're delusional and you're talking in circles, and this is why people don't take anything the left says seriously sometimes. What are you even talking about right now? What are you even talking about? Like, Destiny's looking at you like you're crazy. You're going on this long rant about how white people are destroying your life, how they're all just racist, no matter what. They just come out the womb racist. This, what you're saying is ironically just pure racism. This is just pure racism. Like, what can you even say if you're a white person watching this video? This is just racism. I've never heard nothing this racist before. Well, I have. But bro, this is unbelievable that this is still going on in 2025. This is crazy. He's like dead serious. He's not trolling. Destiny's trying to be understanding. I don't know why. But bro is insane. First
of all, we both can agree that in order to fix the problem, you have to acknowledge the problem. So if we can have white people acknowledge that, yes, I do have inherent racism, then we can fix it. And that also gives black people an understanding that, well, white people will show microaggression. So that's up to the black individual. Can they handle it, or should they, deter from it? And this is a conversation that we should be having.
Wouldn't it be better? Why can't we just use words like systemic racism or systemic privilege? Wouldn't that just be simpler for everybody? Like trying to convince the average person, the average white person, by the way, you're racist, just so you all know, all of you are racist. Wouldn't it be easier to say like, hey, all of you benefit from a system that, prejudice against non-whites historically? Like, wouldn't that be a pretty easy thing that most people, or at least most people on the left, could buy into, as opposed to trying to get everybody to acknowledge that they're racist?
Yes, I do agree with that idea of using the term systemic racism and not inherent racism. But the problem with that is that a lot of people, they will like to deflate the idea of systemic racism and make racism a whole thing on its own. Because when you say racism, no one says systemic racism, although systemic racism focuses on the system in itself. So when you talk about racism, people try to change the ideas of it, then saying that, oh, you can only be racist if you do da 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 da. Or if you do
I feel like it's important though, because I feel like systemic racism is a much different thing, right? Like you could theoretically have a society that has like systemic racism where none of the individual people are actually acting in a racist manner. And I think it's important for people to understand that, no?
Well, so the thing is, systemic racism basically it is the idea of there's laws that's embedded, and that's the idea of systemic racism, is that there's laws embedded that benefit white people and not black people. But when we talk about things like police pulling people over, that's not systemic. That is systemic racism, because they are using a certain law to do that, which is Warren v. U.S. But we also have to understand that cop that pulled that person over was solely because that person was black, and that had nothing to do with the system and had everything to do with the inherent racism that the system has built. And that's the idea that we have to give. Because systemic racism, again, it focuses on the laws in itself being inherently racist to black people. And we can name a few things, but when we talk about inherent racism, it's the individual who's doing racist practices without noticing it, which is completely different.
Okay. Okay, on the particular event, what exactly was the microaggression from Z?
So before I start, I would like to say that I do believe that both parties were in the wrong, and I do think the way it was handled was very mismanaged, and I think Peyton was very wrong in there. Although, free Peyton, hope he gets out soon. What I would say was the microaggression there was that Z was basically making statements that in the individuals in the chat, they didn't know what they were doing, which in my opinion, I don't see it as microaggression, because if you looked at the full chat, the whole conversation in itself was both parties trying to defend themselves. And I'm gonna be honest, if I was in Z's position, I would have said, I'm not gonna say no nut shit, but she didn't say no nut shit, in my opinion. I do think that she was defending herself, and people see it as microaggression because of the system that we have. So I don't see it as microaggression. People might be upset with that idea, but I do think that both parties were in the wrong when it came to the conversation that was happening.
Sure, but people aren't upset that both sides are in the wrong. People are upset because they're saying Z acted in like an insanely racist way from some microaggression.
I'm upset because this person is completely delusional and insane. And Destiny's not really going that hard on them right now. I'm being honest. These are the clowns that the left keeps feeding to Charlie Kirk. I just can't take anyone seriously who redefines a word like racism conveniently. That conveniently means they cannot possibly ever be accused of it. The mental gymnastics these people do to explain their definition of racism is wild. These are just the comments that are going on under these videos, and all the comments are making complete sense. This person is insane. completely crazy. And he gets to vote. He can vote in the next election. just don't forget that. Anyways, my name is LFR Jojo. Please make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.